The Smash roster is one of my favourite parts of the entire Smash series, with the inclusions of new fighters every installment. Never knowing who's going to make it into Smash 6, some fighters don't make it in, either being deconfirmed from Mii costumes, assist trophies, or other fighters from a third-party developer taking the spot, as well as a few other reasons. Welcome to A New Foe Has Appeared, where we talk about ideas for fighters that could possibly happen in Smash 6, if not the future. I'm your host BB8 from BB8's House. As always, let's get into it. Up next. That's right. Hollow Knight is who we are going to talk about today. Hollow Knight is one I've had on the table for quite a bit, but with the aesthetic of the character, I feel like he could fit well as a part of the roster. And with the vibe the character has, I feel like it does remind me of Ori, who I've already talked about before, quite a bit. And without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? For the moveset, the neutral special, we have Shade Soul. The knight conjures a spirit projectile and sends it flying forward to burn its opponents. The vengeful spirit will travel all the way across the screen until it hits an opponent, surface, or goes off the stage. The spirit is a powerful projectile and will use up to 1 soul per use. The vengeful spirit will disappear once it makes contact with an opponent or surface. If the knight's soul charge is full when used, the knight will instead cast Shade Soul, a more powerful version of Vengeful Spirit. The Shade Soul is an entirely black void-filled spirit that will not disappear after hitting an opponent or surface. It will instead continue to travel forward, dealing havoc until it exits the stage, and the Shade Soul will take 2 soul charges after casting. The side special, we have Shade Cloak. Using the Mothwing Cloak, the knight dashes forward quickly in a similar style to Fox's side special, but without the startup lag. The Mothwing Cloak uses no soul to use and does not deal damage. Instead, it acts as an extended dodge and allows the knight to dodge attacks and zip by opponents to get behind him. The Mothwing Cloak does have a 2-second cooldown which lag between users, and if the knight has a full soul charge, they will instead use the Shade Cloak. Unlike in the game, in Smash, the Shade Cloak would use 1 soul charge. With the Shade Cloak side special having the same effect, but instead dealing stabbing damage also as the knight slices through the opponent as it's engulfed in the darkness of void. For the up special, we have Crystal Heart, a chargeable recovery that does not use any soul. The knight charges up as crystals form around it and shoots itself high into the air. While in the air, only air will gather around the knight. But when used on the ground, crystals will form around the knight to indicate how high the Crystal Heart will launch. The Crystal Heart has 3 heights depending on how long it is charged. The first is about as high as Bayonetta's up special. The second is about as high as Pit's up special, and the third being as high as Lucario's full aura up special, but takes about 4 to 5 seconds to charge. The recovery deals damage, but will also put the knight into a free fall state once the peak is reached, and you can only travel upwards. For the down special, we have Descending Dark, a unique special with 3 different abilities dependent on circumstances. First up, we have Focus. If down B is used on the ground, the knight will begin to cause with energy being drawn in around itself. If the knight can focus energy without taking any damage for 3 seconds, they use 3 soul charge, but they also recover 15% damage after the focus special is finished. To use focus, you need to have at least 3 soul charge. And taking any damage or trying to dodge while trying to heal it will immediately stop the special and drain 3 soul charge. So focus gives you great health with the risk of even a 0.5% hit stopping the move in its traces. If down B is used in the air, the knight will perform a desolate dive as the knight glows white, aura as they descend quite quickly downward with energy consuming around them. Once hitting the ground, the dive creates a small shockwave that delivers a shockwave that spreads out and up. This attack can also spike opponents. The Desolate Dive is very strong with the knockback of using 2 soul charges, and you cannot exit out of the attack once it begins until you either fall off the stage or hit the ground. If the soul meter is full and the knight is in the air, the knight will perform a descending dark. The descending dark engulfs the knight in a black void and deals more damage, spikes opponents, and will bury opponents caught in the shockwave. And once it hits the ground, with the drawback of using 3 soul charges. And finally, for the final smash, we have Dream No More. Quickly taking out the Dream Nail and lunges forward with a high speed and deadly precision. If the knight makes contact with any opponents, the camera zooms in as the captured opponents are sent to a pitch black void where they float helplessly in the air. The knight lets out a screech as their helmet bursts in 2 and the knight is overtaken by void energy. The knight sprouts a large void-like tendrils behind its back and begins an onslaught of slashing attacks with the tendrils of void energy, similar to Bayonetta's final smash. You can mash the attack buttons to deal more damage, and slashes the opponents. After a few moments, this attack, the screen flashes white, and everyone is transported back to the battlefield. For the ults and the Kirby Hat, we have the Ghost of Hollow Nest being the standard outfit, Sibling Ceiling with the red cloak being Hornet themed, Grub Song Elegy being the green cloak being themed after Grub Father, Lifeblood Warrior being the blue cloak being themed after Lifeblood, No Cost Too Great being the white cloak being the Pale King themed, the Hollow Knight being the brown cloak with orange eyes being Hollow Knight themed, Broken Vessel with the orange cloak and orange eyes being Infection themed, and finally we have the Lord of the Shades with the black cloak and black helmet with white eyes being Shade themed. And the Kirby Hat, Kirby gets a copy of the Knight's helmet with the copy ability of Vengeful Spirit, and can use Shade Soul if he has under 20% damage. For the classic mode route, we have Into the Abyss, referencing the Knight's journey to find the Abyss for the true ending of Hollow Knight. The Knight will battle opponents who are references to various bosses fought within Hollow Knight. Round 1, we have Giant Ganondorf, who has a preference to using smash attacks, being a reference to False Knight. Round 2, we have Corrin, 3 times in the black colour scheme, green colour scheme, and standard Corrin, being the reference to the Mantis Lords. Round 3, we have Giant Robin in its standard uniform, being a reference to the Soul Master. Round 4, we have Ridley in its dark colour swap, being a reference to Nosk. Round 5, we have Mr. Game & Watch 7 times, being a reference to the siblings, and Shades fought in the Abyss. Round 6, we have Giant Knight, being a Hollow Knight costume swap, as a reference to the Hollow Knight. And for the boss fight, we have Ganon. For the victory theme, poses, and the Punch-Out title, the victory theme I went with is Hollow Knight's victory theme with the orchestral remix. The defeat pose, we have no clapping, but instead, the Knight shade is seen floating on the defeat screen, staring ominously, and an echo of the Knight's defeat. And for victory pose 1, the Knight floats in the air as particles of light from all around fly into the Knight, as a reference to when the Knight gains a new power-up in Hollow Knight. Victory pose 2, a bench is seen on stage as the Knight sits on it and reads a map while kicking their legs slightly. And for victory pose 3, the Knight slashes the air several times with their nail as Geo fall around the Knight victoriously. And the Punch-Out title, we have the Sealed Vessel. For the Amiibo, Hollow Knight Smash Render would be accurate to the games by having a pose identical to Hollow Knight's pose on the game's artwork. The Amiibo would have Hollow Knight in the same pose as the Smash Render, with the extra touch of dark elements onto the Amiibo base, with Hollow Knight's B shade appearing in the background as extra detail. Unlike Hollow Knight does in the games, the Amiibo would end up being glow in the dark, like Boo, for example. And the game's compatible with it. This game wouldn't really have a big compatibility thing, but because Hollow Knight's an indie game, I don't really see this Amiibo being compatible with much. Because yet again, it would have minor compatibilities, giving you loot in games, but I wouldn't see it having any major compatibility to the Amiibo outside of Smash Bros. So if you were to tap this into like Tears of the Kingdom, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, tapping it in will just give you loot. But for Smash Bros, you can tap in Hollow Knight to summon in a fighter you can train. For the stage, we have Hollow Nest from Hollow Knight, which came out in 2017. On the surface, a lonely town of Dirtmouth is safely nestled in the valley between the Howling Cliffs and the Crystal Peak. Most travelers to the kingdom reach Dirtmouth via the King's Pass. Before the bridge up to crumbled it away, the caverns below the town were heavily transformed into crossroads to allow transportation of bugs and goods across the land. For the support fighters, we have Hornet and Zoti the Mighty. The fearsome sibling of the Knight joins the fight as a support fighter, and Hornet is a very deadly, fast and powerful support fighter, so her chances of appearing are significantly less. But if she does appear, you better hope she's on your side, because the Hornet will jump around the stage and attack in 3 patterns. The first, she will leap into the air and point her needle forward as she crashes down at a diagonal trajectory. Her second, she will toss the needle forward a far distance as it is attached to a thread, and once at its peak distance, she will retract it back to her to deal additional damage. And her final attack, she levitates in the air and shouts as she uses glowing light energy fueled thread and rapidly whips it around herself so fast it looks like she is in a sort of orb. And for Zoti the mighty grey prince himself, Zoti the Mighty, appears in Smash Bros. He isn't a support fighter, but he would tell you it was all by choice, and that the knight should be his Echo Fighter. In any case, Zoti is a dud support fighter because his nail is made of shell wood, which cannot deal any damage to opponents. As Zoti dashes back and forth across the battlefield, swinging his blade, Life Ender, attempting to attack opponents if he makes contact with an opponent. It will make a tink sound and deal no damage, but Zoti will pose mightily and laugh triumphantly. Surprisingly, he is very resilient to attacks, and it can take a good number of hits before you can KO him. For the music, we have Dirtmouth, the False Knight remix, Green Path, Hornet remix, Mantis Lords, Fungal Wastes, Decisive Battle, Broken Vessel, Nosk remix, Dream Battle, White Palace, Sealed Vessel, Hollow Knight, and Radiance Remy. For the spirits, we have the Knight being the Fighter Spirit, Hornet, Zoti the Mighty, the Grey Prince Zoti, the Hollow Knight, the Pale King, the White Lady, the Last Stag, Cornifer and Iselda, Quirrell, Cloth, Grubs and the Grubfather, the Radiance, False Knight, Dung Defender, Great Nail Sage Sly, Hive Knight, the Mantis Lords, the Nosk, the Soul Master, and Grim. And finally, for the reveal trailer, the trailer begins with an iconic Smash Bros logo appearing on the screen. As the music builds up, we see some familiar platform from the game's menu screen in the background. Suddenly, a shadowy figure drops down from above and lands on the platform. The camera pans up to reveal the silhouetted figure of Hollow Knight standing tall. With his nail at the ready, Hollow Knight starts to swing his nail around, showing off his swift and precise attacks. The camera zooms in on his mask as he turns his face to the screen. The trailer shows off some of Hollow Knight's special moves, including Soul Arts and Shade Cloak abilities. We see him fighting against a variety of characters from the Smash Bros roster, using his speed and agility to dodge attacks and strike back devastating blows. and the screen then splashes the Knight, as he'll be called in Smash Bros, emerges from the shadows. And it then cuts to gameplay of Hollow Knight, and the trailer then ends with a shot of Hollow Knight standing triumphantly on the battlefield, and the screen then fades to white and splashes Super Smash Bros. Times Hollow Knight. So guys, what did you think of Hollow Knight? Yet again, I did have this one on the table for quite a bit. I just didn't know when the right time to bring up Hollow Knight was. Because yet again, there is a sequel on the way called Hollow Knight Silk Song, to my knowledge. So, I would have done a Hollow Knight to tie in with that, but I thought, why not do a Hollow Knight now, than wait until Hollow Knight Silk Song came out to do a tie-in. So, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and turn your notification bell on so you don't miss more new foes appeared in the future. And I will see you all in a future new foes appeared episode. BB8 out.